We all remember when the bailouts went so terribly wrong. Everyone was angry. The president mentioned it last night. So you will know exactly where the money is going. But how will we know?
Because we're going to put every bit of this transparently up on a website.
While we've been here, some pretty grim job numbers back at home. 9.5% unemployment in June, the worst numbers in 26 years. How do you explain that? Because when the president and you all were selling the stimulus package, you predicted at the beginning that if you get this package in place, unemployment will peak at about 8%. So either you misread the economy or the stimulus package is too slow and
The truth
too small.
is, we and everyone else misread the economy. If we do everything right, we do it with absolute certainty, we stand up there and we make really tough decisions, there's still a 30% chance we're going to get it wrong.
Since the Vice President brought it up, can you tell the American people, sir, what you were talking about?
I don't remember exactly what Joe was referring to, not surprisingly.
With respect to the Recovery Act, how do you assess the success of the stimulus program in creating jobs first or preventing more job loss?
An absolute success.
The stimulus package wasn't passed by the Tea Party. The Tea Party didn't increase the deficit by 35%. The Tea Party is not the problem here. This president has failed to lead. In any other private sector enterprise, he would be fired. If he was asking to be re-upped to run a football team, they wouldn't hire him. If he was trying to be a CEO for a second contract, he wouldn't be hired.
My dad used to have an expression. He'd say, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget, and I will tell you what you value. Look, you know what's coming, folks. You know what's coming from the Republicans. They're going to talk about after this, matter of fact, and you're going to see on some of the shows after this is all over, that Joe Biden, Michelle Obama, 4 distinguished governors, 4 incredible women with a story, all they talked about was how we're going to spend more money. They're typical tax and spend Democrats. That's what this is going to be. Try to put together things that are well beyond our economic reach. We're going to send those people who may not be facing the same problems that you heard up here into the poorhouse. Did the economic package we put in place, including the Recovery Act, is it the right package given the circumstances we're in? And we believe it is the right package given the circumstances we're in. We misread how bad the economy was, but we are now only about 120 days into the recovery package. The truth of the matter was no one anticipated, no one expected that recovery package would in fact be in a position at this point of having distributed the bulk of money.
No, but a lot of people were saying that you needed to do something bigger and bolder than, including the economist Paul Krugman. And he's saying right now, he's saying the same thing again. Don't wait. You need a second stimulus. You need it now.
Look, what we have to do now is we have to properly, adequately, transparently, and effectively spend out this $780.
That's your job. You're in charge of it now.
That is my job, and I think we're doing it well.
He can step in and become president, and I don't think anybody has any doubt about that.
See, now that's some bullshit.
How are you going to pay for this? The national debt's at $9 trillion now and headed north. How are you going to pay for all these things you want to do?
Well, $10 to $12 billion per month, $196 billion just for next year's request alone, that's a big chunk of change. And so if we can phase down the war in Iraq, that's going to start helping us on the money front.
Well, you say that if you run and win, obviously you think you're electable, so you also say that you would return respect to the U.S. Where is the U.S. not respected, and how would you return respect?
Well, the United States is not respected. We're not respected for our smarts. We're not respected for virtually anything anymore. I mean, those days are gone. You look at what's happening in China. We're rebuilding China with our money, with all the jobs that we're producing. The jobs that we're producing are being produced in China. We have an effective rate of unemployment of probably 19%, and it could be higher than that. You know, they say 9%, but it's not 9%. It's much closer to 20%. And you look at China, they're up 36% from last year. They're going through the roof. And what they're doing is they're making all of our products. We don't make products anymore. You look at what's happening with OPEC, how they're ripping us off with the oil prices. These 12 guys sit around a table, and they set the price of oil. We're going to be at $100 a barrel soon, and after that, we're going to be at 150 and 200, and we have nobody to protect us and say, fellas, you better not do it.
You know that wish list you have of all the things you would buy if you didn't have bills to pay? Well, President Obama submitted his to Congress this week. He even proposes some ways to pay for the items on his list with $3 billion in tax hikes, ones that Congress will probably never pass. The good news is the debt added to our $19 trillion in IOUs would only go up $500 billion. Welcome to Washington. It's all part of our weekly's America's Debt Crisis series.
The budget that we're releasing today reflects my priorities.
President Obama's $4.1 trillion wish list hit the halls of Congress this week, and Republicans swiftly kicked much of it to the curb.
I look at this as something that is totally disconnected with the reality of where we are.
That reality is a $19 trillion national debt that the president's farewell budget will only add to.
There are some priorities that we have that are deeply held that Republicans in Congress do not share.
This is normal in Washington. Both parties committing to budgets where the nation spends more than it takes in, sending those IOUs to future generations. An attitude summed up by former Vice President Dick Cheney, who said, deficits don't matter. President Obama, to his credit here, proposes ways to pay for some of his new proposals with $3 trillion in tax hikes, but Republicans in Congress will never pass these into law. He suggests $320 billion for investments in high-tech transportation, self-driving cars, low-emission mass transit, high-speed rail, all on the docket, paid for by a $10.25 a barrel tax on oil. But Republicans will never go for that. Most of Obama's spending proposals are traditional deficit spending, not offset by spending cuts or tax hikes.
Let's make America the country that cures cancer once and for all.
That's not to say they're bad programs. $1 billion, for instance, to go to the cancer eliminating effort headed up by Vice President Biden. $19 billion to defend the country against cyber attacks, a 35% increase.
One of the biggest gaps between the public sector and the private sector is in our IT space, and it makes everybody's information vulnerable.
The president's budget offers to try to slow the growth of annual deficits for the next decade by limiting discretionary spending. But as Americans age, increasing mandatory spending, like Medicare, will continue to add to the national debt. This year, $200 billion will go towards the interest on that debt, just the interest. And that amount is expected to more than triple by 2026. It's Washington, D.C.'s game of kicking the can, and your kids are going to be it.
Well, I was just, so do you have an idea? And we saw the president come out.
Yes, well, I think tremendous amounts, and I've never heard it said, but I think hundreds of billions of dollars of money, and let's call it tax money, could come from other countries when we stop them from ripping us off, or by, as an example, we're protecting South Korea from North Korea. Why aren't they paying for it? South Korea makes a fortune. If they were a company, their stock would be very high. And they make a fortune largely because of us. Why are we protecting? When bombs were thrown at them a month ago by North Korea, we send the George Washington aircraft carrier, one of the great ships of the world, and a fleet of destroyers over to North Korea. Why aren't they paying for this protection? I don't mind. We'll protect them. Pay for the protection. So when you look at 100 other items just like this, hundreds of billions of dollars could come in. So you wouldn't have to play around with Medicaid and Medicare and things that really are dear to people's heart.